with them for now. But, I haven't thrown them away. Like, I'm a big believer in the subconscious mind and the fact that it's working for you all the time. And even with projects I'm actively on, like I'll be working on some level in Braid, and it's like, this isn't quite exactly what I want it to be. And I go to bed, right, and I wake up the next morning, and I'm like, I know exactly what to do with that level. And sometimes that occurs over a longer period. Sometimes it's a month later, I haven't touched that level, and then I fire it up, and instantly I know the answer. And it's not because I was consciously thinking about it down the street, but it's because, your mind works on the things that matter to you, right? So those prototypes that have been packed away, I think they're getting a little attention once in a while. So I don't actually walk down the street and see a tree and go like, I want to make a tree climbing game. But just weird little thoughts pop up, and who knows where they came from, but they did come from things that I encountered somehow, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's just about being open to those things and just being kind of aware of how your own, like you've obviously discovered that's how your creativity works.
Oh yeah.
For you, but whereas for me it's far more about just sitting down and just hammering through it and just kind of not like letting the subconscious work, but at the same time forcing my conscious mind to kind of push through those ideas until the end result, and maybe kind of picking and choosing from that work rather than just completely abandoning it. But it's complicated. Creativity is complicated. It's not just you walk down, like you say, and you see a tree, or you see, a robot, or you see some guy surrounded by little black birds who's you need to shoot with a bazooka, and suddenly there's your game. It doesn't work like that. I think it's just everything. It's just life and knowing what you're interested in and just being okay with it and being open to the possibility that, and like you said in your earlier, prepared to put it out there. Being prepared to kind of say, I think this about this, and that's fine. And so finding some way to put that into your game as well. Even if you're working on this hugely commercial title, find some way to sneak all that stuff in, because that's really important. Otherwise you'll go crazy.
Yeah, I am somewhere in between the two. I let my subconscious work, but I also try to write down snippets of ideas and sometimes entire game ideas, and then go shelve them until they can come back out again, until it's the right time, in the right place, all that sort of thing.
Right, well, we'll let open up some questions, so feel free to have specific ones or open up to the entire panel.
Don't ask anything about PowerPoint though, because it's quite clear for everyone.
No, you have the down front first hand.
In your presentation there, you had 3 points. The second point, you kind of explored the areas that we could possibly cover with game design as opposed to what we've covered so far. And then you put in these little points that you said, this is the innovation, this is what we should kind of aspire, kind of interpolate. My question to you is, if a company like Valve took Half-Life, a first-person shooter, and merged that with your Braid idea, kind of create a third-person, time control, your puzzle-solving idea, would you see that as that kind of interpolation, that kind of innovation, or would you see that as a first-person shooter using your kind of gimmick Braid idea?
I would say it depends on the metric properties of that space, which I don't know what they are. I would regard that flippantly. Yeah, that's a definite interpolation. You're taking 2 points that are well known, and you're picking up a hybrid of them, right? It depends on if the blue shape is convex, right? So if it's concave, you can end up with something that's outside.
Because you also mentioned how you feel about kind of writing for yourself as opposed, or creatively, as opposed to writing for a product, which you were kind of against in that way. So you're taking a big title like that and using that, and you put up kind of speed. I'm thinking, would you see that as more of a gimmick?
Well, I'm not against creation of product as opposed to art or anything. For me, I figure there's enough people out there making products that I don't need to be another one of them, right? That's kind of my personal.
I think they've got it covered, yeah.
Yeah. Wait, what was the other part? Would it be a gimmick? To fuse it? I don't think it would be a gimmick. Like, there's a lot of exploration that can happen. So there already sort of is a game that has shooter elements, 3D shooter, and a little bit of rewind stuff. It's called Time Shift. It's actually more like Max Payne with a little bit of rewind, and I think it does feel a little bit like a gimmick, that game, but it's not for lack of trying. I think the framework that they put themselves in of this traditional shooter was not conducive to doing a lot of creative things with rewind. So that conventional part of the game, the shooter part, acted as kind of this really heavy boat anchor that kept them from flying around in space and trying cool stuff. I think they could have, but it would have made it a less conventional shooter. right? So, yeah.
Next question.
Yeah, I'd like to pick up on Paul's point about the youngness of the gaming scene. Liz Paul, isn't it?
Hi.
Hi. I grew up playing games on a ZX Spectrum, so I know you don't need great technology to make really addictive games. So what I'd like to ask the panel is to flip that sort of forward extrapolation and take, we're all slightly turning 12 fast. Where is innovation going to take us in terms of storytelling and content in the forward direction? And if I could perhaps scratch your thoughts a little bit on that. We were talking about real-world games earlier. I suspect that many real-world games, over the period of time, invent a great number of rules that are fitted into it, and subsequently there's a culling process, and they simplify over time. An example would be Go, which has a very, very simple rule set, but is a fantastically complicated and interesting game. Are we going to see that sort of process happening in games, or are we going to see Lara Croft goes to the shops, or Diffusion to Zimmer Frame?
Are you asking specifically about narrative, or are you just asking about...
I guess I'm asking about, if we're staying in Jonathan's green zone and farming that area, how that will, what fertile fruit is there to find there in the panel's opinion?
Well, so I'll start, because I think you may need to clarify the question some more, right? Mm-hmm. So if you think that narrative is a good goal for a game, like games should be about storytelling, which I don't, because I think that games are kind of encumbered and can't tell stories very well. But if you did, then obviously you could go forever exploring that space, because, hey, books and movies and stuff do, right? They just find new stories to tell all the time. So if games are just as good at telling stories, they can do all that same stuff, right? I don't actually believe that that's possible, though, because we can't do stories. So I guess, I don't know. What?
I disagree. because I think games can tell stories, they just tell stories differently. It's just that we're still kind of trying to figure out how that works. But I think the interesting thing about games is that they do kind of span that space between things like Go and chess, which are games, which are just rules, and this kind of more narrative expressionistic thing. So I think there's probably the blob, the big blue blob, is much larger than we imagine it. It's probably a group, and it's fine for people like Jonathan to believe that games aren't narrative, to kind of work over in his corner of the blob and create incredible work. And it's fine for people who think that games can tell stories to work over in their corner of the blob. And maybe sometimes they'll fuse together, and maybe sometimes they'll be fighting and arguing on panels at Acme. It's all good. I think that it's a medium that allows that expression on two fronts, which makes it so interesting. And I think that you can innovate in both those kind of directions, and then probably never the twin shall meet, but still do interesting work.
And we're used to thinking about games as a medium when there's such a wide variety of things. If we expand the idea of computer games out to electrified fun, there's a whole bunch of other things that we can do.
I think I've got a device like that in my house.
See you later.
Yeah, and that goes back to my card game versus ball game versus whatever. I think that I don't think that it is a unified blob. I think that there is definitely a scope of where things are going. But to try to get back to the original question a little bit, the development of tools to help us make games, I think, is going to lower the bar quite dramatically and help solve some of the technological problems, so that we can concentrate more on trying to tell our story or find our piece of innovation, or find that bit of fun or the expression that we want to really focus on, and not have to worry so much about the technology. And that's definitely already happening at the moment.
Next question. Yes, over here.
I had a question. First, I have to take exception with that games can't be narrative. I think Half-Life or any of LucasArts, adventures can show that games can be good narratives if they're well done. It's using a tool to do a job badly. It doesn't say that the tool is bad, it's just the word was bad. But in this case, it's good. And on innovation, you've mostly focused on innovation as a way of taking out little pieces of the design space. And one thing that I would like